At 11:47 p.m. on a rainy Thursday night, Ethan Miller sat alone in his old pickup truck and counted his money. One $20 bill. That was it. He checked his wallet again, hoping he had somehow missed another bill. Nothing. His checking account had $18.42. His gas tank was almost empty. His rent was 4 days overdue, and his phone had already displayed 3 missed calls from his landlord. Ethan leaned back against the driver's seat and closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. 6 months earlier, he had a steady construction job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Then the company lost a major contract. Employees were laid off. Ethan was one of them. At first, he told himself it would only take a few weeks to find another job. Then weeks became months. He applied everywhere. Warehouses, construction companies, delivery services, maintenance positions. He went to interviews wearing his cleanest shirt and carrying a folder containing his resume. But every time he heard the same words. We decided to move forward with another candidate. Ethan had stopped telling his friends how many applications he had submitted. He was embarrassed. His savings disappeared slowly. First went the money for emergencies. Then the money he'd saved for his daughter's college fund. Then the small investment account he'd promised himself he'd never touch. Finally, he sold his second car. Now there was only $20 left. Ethan looked at the bill in his hand. He could buy dinner. He could put a little gas in the truck. Or he could do something else. Something risky. Something that might fail. Something that might change everything. He just didn't know what yet. The call from his daughter. His phone rang. It was his 12-year-old daughter, Sophie. "Hey, Dad." Ethan forced a smile. "Hey, kiddo. You coming over Saturday?" "I wouldn't miss it." They had planned to watch a movie together. Sophie hesitated. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Are you okay?" Ethan looked out through the windshield. "I'm fine." "You sound sad." He swallowed. "Just tired." There was a long silence. Then Sophie said something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. "You always tell me that bad days don't last forever." Ethan smiled. "I do. So don't let one bad day decide everything." Ethan stared at the $20 bill. "Where did you get so smart?" She laughed. "I learned it from you." After the call ended, Ethan sat in silence. He realized something. He had spent months waiting for someone to rescue him. A company. A recruiter. A friend. A lucky break. Maybe nobody was coming. Maybe he had to make his own opportunity. He looked at the clock. 11:58 p.m. Then he started the truck. He drove to the only place he knew would still be open. A 24-hour hardware store. He walked inside holding his $20. He bought a pair of work gloves, a cheap bottle of cleaning solution, a roll of heavy-duty trash bags, and a small package of microfiber cloths. Total, $19.73. He had 27 cents left. The cashier looked at him. "Starting something?" Ethan smiled. "Hopefully." He walked out carrying a tiny bag of supplies. He didn't have a business. He didn't have a logo. He didn't have customers. He didn't even have a plan. But he had one thing he hadn't had in months: a reason to wake up tomorrow. The next morning, Ethan made a handwritten flyer. It said, "Affordable home and yard help. Cleaning, moving help, small repairs, yard work. Reliable, honest, available now." At the bottom, he wrote his phone number. He made 20 copies at the library. Then he walked around his neighborhood putting them on community bulletin boards and asking local businesses if they needed help. Most people ignored him. Some said no. One man laughed. "You really think you're going to make a living doing odd jobs?" Ethan smiled. "I hope so." By noon, he had heard no 11 times. At 2:17 p.m., his phone rang. "Hello?" "Hi, I saw your flyer." Ethan straightened immediately. "Yes, ma'am. I have a garage that needs cleaning. It's pretty bad. I can help." "How much?" Ethan looked around his truck. He had no idea what to charge. "Whatever you think is fair." The woman laughed. "That isn't how business works." Ethan smiled. "You're right." They agreed on 60. It wasn't much, but it was his first customer. He spent 5 hours cleaning that garage. The woman watched him work. "You don't have to work that hard," she said. Ethan kept going. "I need the work." When he finished, the garage looked completely different. The woman handed him $80. "I said 60. You earned the extra." Ethan stared at the money. Then he thanked her. As he walked back to his truck, he realized something. He had made more money that afternoon than he had made all week, sitting at home sending applications. That evening, he bought groceries. Not for himself, for Sophie. He wanted her to have something special when she came over. One customer became 3. The woman from the garage recommended Ethan to her neighbor. Her neighbor needed help moving furniture. That customer recommended him to a friend. Within 2 weeks, Ethan had 7 small jobs. Cleaning, yard work, moving boxes, painting a bedroom, fixing a broken fence. He worked from sunrise until dark. His hands hurt. His back hurt. But something inside him felt alive again. He created a simple name, Miller Home Help. He wrote it on the side of his truck with a marker. It wasn't professional, but it was his. Then came the problem. Ethan realized he couldn't do everything himself. He had more calls than he could handle. One afternoon, he received a message from a young man named Marcus. Marcus was 19 and looking for work. Ethan invited him over. "I don't have much money," Ethan said. Marcus nodded. "I'll take whatever you can pay." Ethan thought about himself 6 months earlier. He remembered what it felt like to need someone to say yes. So he did. "Come with me tomorrow." Marcus became his first employee. Sort of. Ethan paid him per job. The business grew, slowly, but steadily. The mistake. Then Ethan made his first major mistake. A customer asked him to clean several rental properties. It was more work than he expected. Ethan agreed to a low price because he desperately wanted the contract. After 2 weeks, he realized he was losing money. He had underestimated labor, supplies, transportation, and time. He was exhausted. Marcus told him, "We can't keep doing this." Ethan knew he was right. He called the customer. "I'm sorry, but I can't continue at this price." The customer became angry. "You agreed." "I know. You need to honor your word." Ethan took a breath. "You're right. I'll finish the current jobs, but I can't accept new ones at that price." He lost the contract. For a moment, Ethan felt like he had failed. Then he opened a notebook. He wrote down every expense, every hour, every mile, every mistake, and he learned something important. Being busy wasn't the same as building a successful business. He needed to learn how to run one. So he started studying. Every night after work, Ethan watched free business courses online. He learned pricing, accounting, marketing, customer service, scheduling. He didn't have a business degree, but he became a student of business. And his little company began changing. 2 years later, Miller Home Help had 12 employees. Ethan had moved into a small office. He was making enough money to pay his bills. He had rebuilt his savings. He had even started putting money back into Sophie's college account. But he still remembered that night. The night he had only $20. He kept the original $20 bill in a small frame above his desk. Under it, he had written, "This was all I had. It wasn't all I needed." Then one Monday morning, Ethan received a phone call. A property management company wanted to hire his business to maintain 24 apartment buildings. It was the biggest contract he'd ever seen. If he won it, his company could double in size. Ethan prepared for a week. He created spreadsheets, calculated costs, prepared employee schedules, designed a professional presentation. On the day of the meeting, he walked into the conference room wearing his best suit. 3 executives sat across from him. The director looked at his proposal. "You've grown quickly." "Yes." "How many employees?" 12. "How many properties do you currently service?" 27. The director nodded, then asked, "What happens if you lose half your employees tomorrow?" Ethan paused. 2 years earlier, he might have panicked. Now he answered honestly, "I'd have a problem." The director smiled. "Good answer," Ethan continued. "But I've built systems so the company isn't dependent on one person. We cross-train employees, maintain backup schedules, and keep emergency staffing contacts. The executives looked at one another. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. At the end, the director shook Ethan's hand. "We'll let you know." Ethan walked outside. 3 days passed. No call. 4, 5. On the 6th morning, his phone rang. He answered. "Mr. Miller?" "Yes. We've selected your company." Ethan closed his eyes. The contract was worth more than anything he had ever earned. He wanted to celebrate, but instead, he remembered the 27 cents left in his bank account years earlier. He remembered sleeping in his truck because he couldn't afford a hotel. He remembered hiding his financial problems from Sophie, and he remembered buying that 1973 bag of supplies. He realized something. The business wasn't successful because of one lucky break. The contract was only possible because of everything he had learned before it. Every rejection, every mistake, every customer, every long night. The unexpected problem. 3 months into the contract, disaster struck. A major storm damaged several properties. Roofs leaked. Basements flooded. Customers complained. Employees called in sick. Ethan's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The company was overwhelmed. One employee told him, "We're going to lose this contract." Ethan stood in the office looking at the chaos. For a moment, fear returned. The same fear from that night. Then he remembered the lesson he had learned from his first failed contract. Don't panic. Make a plan. Ethan divided the properties into emergency categories. He called every employee. He contacted temporary workers. He negotiated with suppliers. He personally worked alongside his crews. For 3 straight days, he barely slept. When the storm cleanup finally ended, the property director called. "We've never seen a contractor respond like that." Ethan expected criticism. Instead, the director said, "We're increasing your contract." The company had survived its biggest crisis, and Ethan had discovered something even more valuable than money. He had become the kind of leader he once needed. 5 years after the night Ethan had only $20 left, he stood in front of a small audience at a community center in Ohio. More than 50 people were sitting in the room. Some were unemployed. Some were struggling with debt. Some were trying to start businesses. Ethan had been invited to speak about entrepreneurship. He looked at the audience. Then he pulled a $20 bill from his pocket. "This is the bill that started everything." People leaned forward. He told them the story. Losing his job, having almost no money, buying 1973 worth of supplies, getting his first customer, making mistakes, almost quitting, learning, growing, eventually building a company that employed more than 60 people. But then Ethan said something unexpected. "The $20 didn't change my life." The room became quiet. "I did." He held the bill up. "The money was almost meaningless. What mattered was the decision I made when I had almost nothing." He looked at the audience. "I could have spent my last money trying to forget how bad things were. Instead, I spent it trying to create something better." Sophie. After the speech, Sophie waited for him outside. She was 18 now. She was preparing to start college. Ethan hugged her. "How was I?" "You cried." Ethan laughed. "I did not." "You totally did." "Okay, maybe a little." Sophie smiled. Then she reached into her bag. She pulled out an old piece of paper. Ethan recognized it immediately. It was a note he had written years earlier. She had found it in an old box. It said, "I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but I'll figure something out." Sophie looked at him. "You wrote that the night you had $20. Ethan nodded. "I remember." She smiled. "You kept your promise." Ethan looked at his daughter. "No." "What?" "We kept it." Sophie hugged him. The company changed. As the years passed, Ethan's company continued to grow. But he refused to forget where it began. He created a program called the $20 Start. Every year, the company gave small grants to people trying to start businesses. Sometimes the grants were only $500, sometimes $1,000. But Ethan knew that a small amount of money could become something much bigger. When combined with determination, the first person he helped was a single mother named Rachel. She wanted to start a mobile pet grooming business. She had no savings. Ethan gave her $1,000, but he also gave her something more important, His time. He taught her how to price services, how to track expenses, how to speak to customers, how to build a schedule. A year later, Rachel sent him a photograph. She had bought her own van. The side read, "Rachel's Paws on Wheels." Ethan stared at the picture for a long time. Then he smiled. He finally understood. The greatest thing he had built wasn't the company. It was the number of people who could now build something for themselves. The last $20. Years later, Ethan's framed $20 bill still hung in his office. A new employee once asked him, "Why don't you put something more impressive there?" Ethan smiled. "What could be more impressive?" The employee looked at the bill. "It's just $20. Ethan shook his head. "No." He pointed to it. "That's the amount I had when I thought my life was over." He paused. "And it's the amount that taught me my life wasn't over." The employee smiled. Ethan continued. "People think they need more money before they can change their lives. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they need courage before they need money." He looked at the framed bill. $20 didn't make me successful. It reminded me that I still had a choice. The lesson. Ethan never forgot that night. He could have bought dinner. He could have put gas in his truck. He could have spent the money trying to make one terrible night slightly more comfortable. Instead, he bought a pair of gloves, cleaning supplies, and trash bags. It wasn't a huge investment. It wasn't a brilliant business strategy. It wasn't a miracle. It was simply one decision. But that decision led to another, then another, then another. And eventually, those small decisions became a completely different life. Ethan learned that sometimes your breakthrough doesn't arrive as a huge opportunity. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a terrible day. Sometimes you don't need $1 million. You need the courage to use the little you have wisely. Sometimes the first step won't make you successful. It will simply make tomorrow possible. And tomorrow gives you another chance. Ethan's story wasn't really about $20. It was about what a person does when the easy choices disappear. When there is no safety net. When nobody is coming to rescue you. When you're tired. When you're afraid. When you don't know how the story will end. You make one good decision, then another. And another. Until one day you look back and realize that the life you once thought was impossible was built from dozens of tiny decisions you almost didn't make. Ethan kept that $20 bill for the rest of his life. Not because it was valuable, but because it reminded him of something he never wanted to forget. You don't have to have everything to begin. You just have to begin with what you have. And sometimes, the smallest decision made on your worst day can become the biggest turning point of your life. If this story inspired you like the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who may be struggling right now, because they may not need a miracle. They may just need someone to remind them their story isn't over yet.